Dr. Chuck the Science Schmuck.
Synchronize. Hello everyone, I'm back from where I have literally no idea. I've been working on a thing, and it doesn't work very well. I'll get to it when I get to it. Today, due to a basic need which will be explained later, I'm going to talk about cactuses. Now, you may be asking yourself, what exactly is a cactus? Why are you asking yourself that? They're right here. I literally have them in front of me. But it's actually one of those things where you think about it and you're like, well, I know what it is, but how do you define it? A cactus is a member of the plant order Cactidae. Cactusae. I had to check my notes. Pronunciation's not my forte, or as it's correctly pronounced, a forta. Pretty much, cactuses are a type of plant with reduced leaf structure, so that generally speaking they don't usually have obvious leaves, and a succulent body which contains water and usually spines on the outside, but not always. They are only present natively in the New World, the Western Hemisphere, which is why I have them separated like this, because this is an interesting feature. Now, if you place two entirely different plants, completely different, not related in the slightest, in two very similar situations, not just plants, also works with animals, but in this context we're doing plants because I don't want to have New World and Old World mice on my table because they leave their little raisins everywhere. But it's the same concept. Plants that are very different under the same conditions sometimes evolve toward a similar outcome. Hence why there are New World cactuses, we're located here, the true cactuses, and Old World cactuses, which are not cactuses, they're more like cactusoids. They're not technically cactuses. So, what is over here? Petunias, and also, although you probably can't see it very well on there, a mess. That's why the floor is concrete. It just drains. Not in any particular direction. Usually I'm sitting in a couple inches of water because I can't manage to connect my washing machine to the proper drain hole. Regardless, that was this long one is a dragon fruit. You may have seen the fruits at the grocery store. They are reddish in color, sort of weird looking, full of seeds. That's where these came from. I have a million of them. They're huge. Probably one of the best houseplants you can grow. The others are, I think I said petunias, prickly pears, also available at the grocery store as either nopals, nopales, but I'm going to call it nobles because as you can clearly see I live in upstate New York, which is a vegetable made of this part. Also, prickly pear cactuses come from these. I'll go more into depth on some specifics about those later, but to illustrate my point, I also have these. Now, let me activate the Schmuck Vision here. Oh man, so much lag. So, the smaller of the two here, by mass, which the Schmuck Vision is probably... Weirdest thing, I think I'm filming someone else's camera. Regardless, the smaller of the two here is a Stapelia plant, which a Stapelia, they evolved in South Africa, generally Southern Africa locations. It looks very cactus-like, doesn't it? But there's no spines here. It's very soft. This is actually a species of carrion flower. I had two bloom recently. Oh boy, was it smelly. It's like this big of a star flower. Editor, put in a picture. Yeah. Interesting plant. Now, this other guy, let me move the Schmuck Vision a little bit so you can kind of get a view of him, is a Euphorbia resinifera. It is a euphorbia. Euphorbia is it's a massive genus of plants. Huge. Poinsettias are in it. You'll notice it looks very cactus-like. Little black spines, no leaves. But it's actually a spurge, which is a really funny word that I really like saying. They call it the resin spurge because the resin is the spiciest substance on the planet. Don't eat it, you'll die. Or at least get very sick. That's why I don't eat this plant. But it is from the mountains of Morocco. This one is not literally from the mountains of Morocco, of course. That is an aspect that does need to be considered about cactuses. I don't know where you're listening from. I do have a few viewers from Germany, I believe. Cactuses are not generally native to Germany. It's an old world region. You're not going to have true New World cactuses. Apparently, the trade of cactuses in the United States and throughout North America is very restrictive A lot are very heavily protected species. You may notice that behind me I have a picture of a saguaro, which is the most famous American cactus, but also only grows in a very tiny region of the Sonora Desert. And even possessing a piece of a wild saguaro will get you in prison, or at least fined until you are a pile of goo. You can't pick them, you can't move them, you can't export them. These aren't cactuses from their native region, so I can do what I want. There's a lot of cactuses. In fact, find anybody, any single person, you're going to find somebody who at one point in their life owned a cactus. If you don't own a cactus and have never owned a cactus, that's weird. Like, that's really weird. Everyone has a cactus at some point in their life. Maybe not these species in particular, but they're universal. Captive grown cactuses, they grow them in greenhouses. Don't pick cactuses from nature. Like, if you live in the area, don't go out in the desert and start picking them up. Yes, I have collected cactuses, but not from the desert, not from their native range, from introduced areas where they're like an invasive species or a garden plant. Don't pick ones from their natural habitat. They need to be there. Most cactuses have care requirements so incredibly delicate that you won't be able to raise them in nature. With the exceptions of potentially very common species that you're probably familiar with. With that said, cactuses do make an excellent houseplant if you can withstand the sound they make. They are a very loud plant. Here, let's take a listen. Cactus. But why am I talking about cactuses? Aside from the fact that I rather like cactuses, that sounds very boring. Just a schmuck in his basement talking about cactuses on a Friday night. Or maybe a Saturday morning. I don't know at this point. I'm at the point of the year where it's 100% dark. But, according to my notes here, I need to transplant a cactus, so the demonstration was meant to be, how do you transplant a cactus from one pot to another? And that's pretty simple. I mean, really, that's not a challenge whatsoever. I mean, I even planted this cutting this morning. That's not even scientific. Like, I don't even need to put on my lab coat to do that. Oh. Yeah, that's not coming off right now. Oh boy. Okay. Dramatic music intro here. What is this? This, you'll note that I'm closing my lab coat because this is a bit of a problem for me. What plant is this? This is called a cholla, which Cholla. It looks like cholla to English speakers, but in Spanish, 2 L's is the equivalent of the backward Russian R. It makes the Y sound, like a Y in English, which makes when people use the backwards R to try to be like a Russian R, it does not make an R sound. It is not even related to an R. Like, it just looks stupid. Don't do that. It doesn't make it look Russian. It makes it look stupid. Focusing, though, what exactly is a cholla? And why in the world do I own one? That's a long story, but I don't have a huge amount of time, so we'll shorten it up. A cholla is a member of the genus Cylindropuntia. They are native to the southwestern United States and Mexico. They are closely related to these Optunias, which... this Optunia here, the taller one, was collected from Connecticut about probably 6 months ago. It's rooted, it's growing. I have several of them. They were from my family's garden. This is a cutting I took today in the dead of night from a parking lot. Not a native species. These are common garden plants. You don't think of cactuses as being far north, but they do tolerate cold really well, especially the Optunias. Opuntias. Opuntia, not Optunia. That's a petunia. The petunia is over there. That's a plant you could basically eat, aside from the fact that it's probably poisonous. These you can also eat, but I have eaten them. Don't know how. This you do not. Now, why am I terrified of this plant? Why does just looking at it make me nervous? Because the cholla is probably one of the most aggressive cactuses known to anyone. Known to me. I don't know if I'm anyone at all. But it is notable because the spines are not straight spines. Like these are just spines. They're like needles. You could stab yourself and it'd be fine. The spines on a cholla are barbed. If you were to touch this, it sticks into you, and then it sticks all its spines into you, and it is stuck. It's very hard to pull it out. I've done it. You hit it, and it's like, huh, oh no. That's why it's called the jumping cholla occasionally, because of the myth that these will actually jump out at you. It's how the plant reproduces. In nature, these exist as large trees, probably a few meters tall, just covered in these little segments. And when an animal or a person passes, these segments attached to them are pulled and form cuttings in new locations to establish cholla forests. This one was grown from a cutting that I got online. I didn't take it from nature. And you can see this in the middle is the original cutting, and these are sprouts that have grown in subsequent years. Now, the other day, while I was removing this plant from its location, this happened. It fell over. Almost killed me. Good thing I have reflexes like a brick. And I'm as strong as a cat. Little cat. The base of the plant has developed root rot, so the main cutting is not well connected to the soil, meaning that it can move around. That is supposed to be upright, but it isn't. So, what I am going to try to do is remove that portion, this tall, long thing, and insert it into its own pot to a relatively good depth, like that, so that it can be its own plant. And then the root rot doesn't really matter in the center of the cholla. If it dies too much, I can sever the other portion and let it go. But here's where the challenge is. What I seek to answer is how exactly do you repot a plant that is this aggressive, that you cannot touch, you should not touch, and you cannot even get close to? Well, it terrifies me to think of what I'm about to do. Why do I do stupid things? But the first step, and the easy step, is the creation of the appropriate soil. That sounds boring to you. You want to see me get a cactus to the face, like that weird guy who ate one. Never jump into one of those either. That was a YouTube thing back in like 2005. So, dirt for cactuses. First of all, a container is helpful. You can make it with your mitts, but it's not very easy. A good starting ingredient for dirt is coffee. I boil the coffee in the same pot, repeatedly adding grounds until it eventually gets full. So I usually at the end of the week have a lot of coffee grounds. Usually the coffee just sits on my stove for like a week and ferments. That's an interesting flavor. So I have a lot of coffee grounds. That's a good place to start. They're organic and not toxic to plants. Yeah, those are fine. And they're a little too wet. So the next thing we add is some peat moss. Yes, I know peat moss is not the most environmentally friendly thing. It's mined from peat bogs, and it's a finite resource that really we should be using coconut fiber, but I don't have the money for coconut fiber. Note that if you breathe it, your boogers will turn black. Mix that up a little bit. That's a nice organic sort of goo, and it looks like dirt. It's not 100% dirt. Additionally, I usually like to add a bit of inorganics to my organics. Native clay. It's basically what Central New York is made of. I used to spend in my youth probably about $80 a week on dirt because I didn't have land that I could mine it out of. Now I've just got a massive hole in my backyard, which is probably problematic considering I don't own this house. I rent it, and I rent the land, and now a lot of the land is in pots full of cactuses. But that's fine. It's fine. Nobody's fallen in it yet. I put a traffic cone in it that I found on the side of the highway. You'd be surprised how many traffic cones you can get off the highway at night. Don't come after me, Department of Transportation. Clay. Additionally, the plant does require drainage. I have here some sand It's ordinary play sand. This particular sand came out of my lizard's enclosure. I have a leopard gecko upstairs, had him for like 20 years. I need to replace his sand. I take the old sand and I use it for planting materials. Don't use it with fish tanks. It kills the plants for some reason. Now you use your hands. Oh, it's smelly. Now, ideally, you would let this sit for a while and sort of ferment itself, but dirt is dirt. It does dirt things. Now, move that aside. The preparation of the pot, you can't just put dirt in a pot. What are you, some sort of heathen? I don't know what a heathen is. I think they live in like big fields of flowers. That might be heath. The dirt will just go out the bottom. So this used to be pasta, dried pasta, great value brand. It's a great value because it says so on the side, but be careful about it because it has weird gristle sometimes. Like, you'll find like hunks of really hard to chew meat in your dried pasta. It's fine, I just spit them out. Don't know what they are, and I don't ask. So this serves to prevent the dirt from leaving, but it allows the water to get out. Some people use gravel, but I find gravel's expensive. And then you have, when you actually empty these, when you're done with them, you have gravel everywhere. And gravel's hard to deal with. Paper, it just sort of decays over time. There. Now, layer with a little bit of dirt. Not all the way full. I'm covered in dirt. And now that I'm a dirty, dirty boy, even though I'm 41 and far too old to call myself a boy, now comes the hard part, trying to capture this plant. Now, the first thing I need is eye protection. And yes, this eye protection would protect my eyes, but I don't want it to touch my face at all. But you can't hear me when I have this thing on. Okay, I'm taking a risk. I can regenerate my face if I have to. Not completely, don't burn off your face, on my recommendation, but eyes. I really do not want a barbed cactus spine in my eye. That's nightmare-inducing, painful levels of unpleasantry. Next, you think, well, I need my hands? No, I don't want to die. I'm going to use gloves, and leather gloves would work excellent. The thing is, leather is permeable. If you touch a barbed surface with leather, it's going to get stuck. So, I got these here PVC gloves, which I should not have to touch the cactus directly at any point unless it's absolutely necessary. I'm not going to grab onto it because it can go through these, potentially. This will just be to cradle or hold, and mainly so that my hands don't come off. I always feel a little bad for hurting it, but this is a necessary stage of propagation. Oh boy. Oh wow, it's actually, you can see, this is problematic. It is penetrating the polyvinyl chloride with its barbs. It is that strong. Better solution would be to cradle it with, where did I put my cardboard? Yeah, this thing would hurt massively if you were exposed to it directly. This sort of damp cardboard probably is better at cradling it. I have scissors. A thing to note, choya is filled with wood inside, so there's a chance this might not work. I have a knife in case I need it. You definitely cannot cut down a choya with these. It has a trunk. Okay. As you can see, I have severed a piece. Note that, due to the impact and the fact that I didn't have good aim, 2 little baby pieces came off. The choya is uniquely fragile in that respect. Because of that, those will get potted separately and be little choyas. Yes, it can regenerate from one of those completely. Additionally, for the sake of growing it, I have this. It's cocaine. It's not cocaine. It's a white powder that you definitely should not snort unless you like growing roots out your nose. It's rooting hormone. It is a hormone that causes plants to develop roots. A cholla has the capacity to develop roots just on its own whenever it feels like. It will do that. But this helps it a little bit because it cauterizes the wound a little and then tells the wound, hey, cells, differentiate into roots. I'm ready to turn into my own plant. It's now just a problem of how in the world do I pick this up without hurting me or it? That's a level of scientific ingenuity that is a little bit above my pay grade, which is minimum wage. Aha! Big scissors. No, I'm not going to cut it. I'm going to try to lift it with these. Metal is probably the best thing for handling it. Maybe not. Okay. I'm gonna have to be a man. No. Okay. Oh boy, this is terrifying. It's like holding a pipe bomb. Maybe a later episode. Not. See, I have dipped it. And now I sort of move the dirt away and insert. Oh, I do not like the word insert. Oh, it's fused to the gloves. Oh no. Unfortunately now everything is on the wrong side. Hold on. It just went through the glove. Okay, it's fine, Doe. It's fine. I mean, I am at an age where my sense of pain is greatly reduced, but look at that. It's not letting go of me. Oh, you can hear it crackling. Oof. Yeah, that's just polyvinyl chloride gloves. These are really thick gloves. If that was my skin, that would be my skin crackling and falling apart. Yeah. I don't know why I grow this indoors. I think I may be the only person in America that has this indoors. Or at all. I don't think people grow these. They're lovely plants. Okay. Oh boy. I want to keep the gloves on. Oh, I'm so afraid. I'm not actually that afraid. I mean, I'm enjoying this considerably. This is some high-stakes, high-test gardening. I mean, this isn't planting your geraniums here, folks. This is growing plants that can hurt you if you mess up. So you want to get the dirt in and not completely bury it. And there is a sprig down at the base, which I'd rather have access to light and air. But I want to make sure that it's relatively firmly compacted because I do not want this plant. I do not want to pick this up with my ungloved hand and have it fall on my arm. I would need to cut my own arm off because this plant is not leaving me otherwise. Ah, it's got me. Now, having lived in Texas, they say that the very bottom of hell is filled with bull nettles. I don't think it's bull nettles, I think it's these. And no, it's not swearing. When you refer to it as a place, it is acceptable. When you use it as an interjection, it becomes a swear word. I don't swear on principle because I think it lacks precision of language. Yes, I'm that big of a nerd. Okay, now the rest of this guy, as you can see, has a growth sprig, and I want to see if that guy can keep up with his growth sprig. So I'm going to, it's a table. I'm going to sweep the dirt in somewhere else. So what I'm doing is dropping a little more dirt around the base. Ooh. I'm going to need new gloves. These are full of holes. This plant actually, interesting story. I have a lot of flies. Don't know where they come from, probably a corpse. But when they land on these, they get impaled and die. So I'm just giving it a little bit of dirt to see if more roots grow and replace the rotted area, and this will recover. because now I have 2, and those little baby guys will get replanted. I also am doing some Stipelia divisions and some dragon fruit, because dragon fruit grows like crazy. I have miles of the stuff almost. It strips. That's fine. I've stepped on those, like, ow, bleh. This would hurt. Oh boy, let's see if I can move it without dying. Yeah. There you go. Repotted. Now, I expect within about 2 weeks that will have a reasonable root system. The way you would check the root system is to yank on it a little. But I'm not going to do that with one of these because I don't want to die, as I've said several times. These are very unpleasant to touch. You will be going upstairs. It's not a he or a she. They're hermaphroditic. They produce flowers with both components. I think. I've never seen one flower. That'd be terrifying too. Spiky flower. These will go upstairs in my window to make sure nobody ever breaks in through that window. So, with that said, I have successfully repotted this. I will clean up and repot the little babies and all the other things I need to do. So, thank you for watching. Hopefully this video didn't go a little too long, and hopefully you enjoyed watching me not suffer as much as I would have without the gloves. Follow me on Instagram. I'm not going to give you the link because you have a brain. You can figure out where it is. 2, don't bother liking and subscribing. That's not ironic. It's true. This channel's not monetized. I'm sure if it was monetized, YouTube would threaten to demonetize me constantly for doing stupid things. And with that, I will engage the extra.